Okay, so thank you very much for those very embodied and personalized, powerful talks to both of you. This is what we can go to, as far we can go with the body topics. And, well, I mean, inside out and outside in. So, and also, we are a lot, when we work on space issues and bodies and space issues, we have a lot of information about the kind of change bodies have in space and the kind of violence it is. So here we also can talk about the violence done to persons and bodies on Earth. And, well, not only the violence, but the need to change, to go through this violence, and the need of change we need in general. It's what we have talked this morning, I think. Annick?
I would like to ask you a question, Adriana, about, well, I have two questions actually, but let's start by the first one, which is, did you do some research in the medication that female astronauts use in order to prevent the periods? How do you say in English?
Menstruation.
Menstruation. Because I know they have a choice to have menstruation or not, and therefore to use estrogen or not.
I mean, I've done a little bit of research into that, but there's not a lot written about it. It's one of those things that, as we were talking a little bit about over lunch, that there's quite a limit to your access as an outsider to medical information about astronauts. And some of this we understand because, again, it's private medical information. You know, we shouldn't necessarily have this. And especially when it comes to women astronauts, there's not many of them. So you would be able to identify them most likely. And so whenever I have tried to research things about this, there's a little bit of information that says, okay, yeah, you can be on birth control pills for regulation of menstruation and so forth, or you cannot. And that's about as far as it goes in terms of the information that I find.
I'm asking because the last paper I read was from 2014, and the conclusion was that it was not statistically sound because there was not enough women.
Yeah, no, exactly.
The sample was too short. So.
Exactly. And, you know, I mean, that's why there's just no research done on this, you know, and no research on different types of hormonal replacement therapies. Because again, you could imagine, because let me back up for those of you who don't know, if you're a transgender person on hormones, or non-binary person on hormones, you don't have any hormones that are designed for you. So we take hormones that are designed for other purposes. So in the US, we call it an off-label use. So the hormones that I take are designed for menopausal women. So it's entirely possible that some of the older women astronauts are on this hormone replacement therapy, but again, for reasons of privacy, we aren't necessarily going to know. And again, this is one of those things where I think there's sort of a complexity that we should keep in mind with sort of this relationship between national space agencies and the commercial sector, where again, the commercial sector is going to have astronauts that are going to perhaps be more diverse than the national space agencies. And thus we may be able to get some more experiences of these things than the types of astronauts that the national space agencies are going to allow, even though I'm totally against the commercialization of space. I think there's sort of a complexity there that we should keep in mind.
And my second question was about this modification of a body, or modification of a human instead of terraforming or being in a capsule, like we heard this, creating a capsule. I would like to have your opinion about this potentially chemical modified body, and and the relation also with Flis, eating the meteorite, which is it a way to transform your, I mean, yes, metaphorically at least, to cope or to confront your body with some kind of other body, the ultimate other. I mean, Adriana is talking about Xeno, and Xeno in Earth Take is welcoming the alien, the other. When we talk about Xeno, is usually to say xenophobia, and we know what we're talking about in France at the moment about that. So is it really encountering, and I'm asking you two the same question, is it really encountering and digesting the other, the ultimate other?
I mean, I want to turn this over to Flis, but I'll add that I was one of the ones who ingested the meteorite as well as Mina, because we were all three of us were at the same event. But Flis?
When I had my quick sentence, like sentence-long artist statement or whatever, where it says that I use science fiction to find new ways to speak about crisis or new ways to approach crisis. It's not only that, I also use it to try out new ways of being in relation with other people and with other bodies, living and non-living, that or new ways to read and respond to others that are less violent than some of the ones we do now. And also within my work, there's in various ways criticism of boundary policing. So with the meteorite, I mean, that's, like you say, a lot of it's a metaphorical thing, but it's breaking down, especially because the meteorite is ground down into dust and then absorbed. It's, once it's inside me, it's kind of then impossible to completely separate. I mean, it does pass through, but impossible to completely separate again. So it's that there's no longer any division of the human and the non-human, or to go back to kind of the industry that I started my career in, this kind of frankly quite ridiculous asteroid defense industry, this very modernist 50s American version of survival, us versus them, us versus nature, us controlling it. It's to kind of really flip that on its head by using one of the same tools that they spoke about, but to, you know, what happens if we use the same tool for a different end, to use it to explore how can we relate differently.
And I mean, I think I'll say it sort of goes without saying, I hope, but I'll say it anyway, that for me, science fiction is always about life on Earth. So it is about an imagination of a future, potentially, but it is really a story about Earth. So one of the things that I would mention also as an important influence for me that also ties into your Air Force 2025 image is another book from about the same time period by Octavia Butler, Parable of the Sower, which takes place in a 2025 in California, also by an African-American author, right? And it's a 2025 California that doesn't feel very far from ours, because it's about fires and climate change and lack of water and all of these things that the western part of the US is experiencing right now. But important for me about that book and the two books in the series is that even with all hell breaking loose in the US, the apocalypse happening, people living through that, there's still the desire to go to space, right? So it creates this nexus around which everyone sort of gathers as a way to provide people with the impetus to continue living through the apocalypse that they are literally living through.
I'm glad you brought up that book. One of the things that I find really compelling about Parable of the Sower is the way it looks at what are the things that would be useful tools for community building in situations of crisis, but it turns it around from what you might expect, because the main protagonist has this, whether you would call it a skill or an affliction, of hyper-empathy. So she can sort of physically feel when someone else is in pain. Or it only really focuses on the injury and pain, but also joy. And at the start, you kind of think, wow, this is going to be kind of the superpower that the book's all focused on. But it very quickly becomes apparent that it's more of a liability. And I just find that really interesting in this current moment when I get quite frustrated when a lot of sort of popular, I don't know, social media posting about kind of how do we have solidarity now? How do we come together? How do we form relations? Often based on a very simplistic idea of empathy that can be a bit problematic because it sort of relies on you standing in someone else's shoes. Well, you're still centered. And so I'm kind of very much interested in these readings that come back from this sort of way of reading and responding to others that's still quite violent, and find, ways that we can be together, ways that solidarity, but that doesn't rely on you being able to imagine yourself in that position.
Maybe there are some questions.
Oui, il y a des questions devant.
Well, thank you very much to both of you for your excellent talks. It was quite intriguing and compelling. So I have a question, and I'm not sure if I'm able to formulate it well, so please help me in case, So we're talking about things like access, and I really like what you said, Flis, when you said that we have to make sure that we don't only make space for our own cause or our own bodies, and what does it mean to have some sort of inclusions, right? The other day I was teaching to my student the fact that the new spacers, let's say, have kind of reconfigured, or 40 years later after the Cold War, we're in different spot. But then I realized, telling them that Elon Musk was trying to bring the sexiest woman, the oldest woman, the first civilian, so I realized that the kind of ideology behind the Cold War is still really driving at least the war within the United States. So I'm just curious. So when we started saying the first woman, the first person of color, so shall we continue to, can we get out of this idea of the first one? Are we just reproducing the ideals of the Cold War? What kind of forms of inclusion can we invent that might undo this first, second, third best, and this kind of hierarchy between bodies? You were the first person to send trans body parts into space. Is it something that is really important for you to be the first? Or I'm just curious to both of you how you see this kind of possibility for bodily inclusions. Thank you.
I guess the quick answer to that for me would be that it's got to not just be representation, and that's kind of very often it's reduced to that. It becomes representation. Rather than fully making something accessible, it becomes an image of it. So it's...
Yeah, I just want to echo what you said. One of the clips that I didn't show in my montage comes from The Expanse, which, spoiler alert, sorry, but on Drummer's ship, it's a polycule, right? So it's a polyamorous grouping of people, right? We need more than just representation. We need a whole sort of new imagination of what it means to be in space, right? There's this great line from one of those sort of queer online news outlets that the title of this story is basically I just want trans mediocrity on TV, right? You just want to sort of see a trans person being a bartender, and there's nothing about their transness that's important. And in fact, there is one sci-fi television show that I want to highlight about this. It's called Another Life, and it's available on Netflix, at least in the US. And as a science fiction show, it's terrible. It's like a mishmash of all sorts of different, colonialist, triumphalist sorts of narratives. However, there's a non-binary character on there who goes by the pronouns they, them. No one makes a point about it. No one questions it. This person has a sexual relationship with a cis man. No one cares. That was, I cried while watching this, right? Because that is science fiction. That is science fiction, to have sort of people's pronouns respected, and for you to see that sort of love in a show. That's still science fiction.
I would like to add here that we're all white. And today we're all white in this room, I think. No.
Here,
okay. Yeah,
student
right.
from Écologie des Arts et des Médias, and Mamadou is from Senegal.
Okay.
He's taking pictures for all of us.
So I think it would be interesting to have some other point of view. And well, I mean, we curated the people talking, so we curated white people. So far, I mean, in this talk. And I was thinking about that because I was thinking of it, all the examples we give are examples coming from the Western culture and the Western sci-fi, and mostly the Americans, I mean, from the United States sci-fi. And it would have been nice to, I know that the sci-fi produced by the Soviet Union and the countries that were under the Soviet Union are telling different kind of stories. I mean, some are the same, but others are different. And also that the way the Japanese are approaching space, and they are sharing the International Space Station, they may tell also a little bit of different stories. So it was just a reflection from myself about how our discourse, which is trying to open up boxes, is still framed into some of those boxes. So that was a comment.
And I just want
to
I just want to sort of add to that. Again, this is another in those litany of firsts, right? But I think it's important to note that the first person of African descent to go to space was from Cuba, so Afro-Cuban descent through the Soviet Union. So yes, there's a lot that I think still needs to be told about sort of the science fiction, some of the historical science fiction of some of these things. And one thing that I'll also say about one of the movies that is in that montage is it's from an Argentinian director that's about a trans woman trying to help her grandma's alien. Yes, that you heard that right. Her grandma's alien get back to space, and so it's again something from South America that's presenting a very different imaginary of space travel and space existences than the one of the North and the West.
Ou des points de vue? Marie, là-bas.
Yes, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the really first human cells that have been sent into space were HeLa cells, were cancer cells, and it was a black woman from the US, and I wanted to know, Flis, if this story of this HeLa Henrietta Lacks story is also part of your background.
I'm aware of the story, and it didn't directly feed into the work that I was doing, but it was kind of in the cloud around thinking about that, as was Octavia Butler's Xenogenesis trilogy, which is another sort of a very different angle to take on cancer. The artist Sonia Dyer has actually done, or I think is still doing, some really interesting work connected to the HeLa cells. I can't for this second remember the exact title of the project, but Sonia Dyer is doing some amazing work on it right now.
And I think it's important to note for those who aren't aware of the story with Henrietta Lacks' cells is that they were stolen from her. they were taken without consent, which again is part of the history of Western colonialism over non-white bodies.
quelqu'un d'autre veut prendre la parole? Annick?
I don't know. Now I'm following my own path, so I'm not sure. I'm following my own trail of ideas, but
anyway, we have also the coffee breaks to have to talk one to each other, to have another thought all together or by ourselves. And if we have a longer talk later, maybe it's not bad all together.
Yep. Absolutely.
I just want to make a remark about this thing. We are all white in this room, or almost. I see Shuli over there as well.
I don't see anything.
But meaning, it also means that we also are always struggling. Even being aware of what's going on, we are still struggling all the time, even with ourselves, maybe. That's all.
Okay, maybe I switch back to French. Donc on fait une pause d'un quart d'heure. Vous allez avoir du café et on reprend dans un quart d'heure avec les projets martiens, avec Valérie Cherletti et Mina Langström. Donc dans des présentations suivies du film de Mina Langström, The Other Side of Mars. Et peut-être je le dis maintenant, j'ai appris récemment que la NASA nommait ses robots martiens, ses rovers martiens avec des prénoms féminins et qu'ils en parlaient en disant « elle »,« she », de la même façon que les Britanniques nomment leurs bateaux au féminin. Donc on en fait ce qu'on veut, mais j'ai appris ça la semaine dernière. Donc je ne sais pas ce qu'il faut chercher dans la psyché des gens qui nomment les rovers martiens, mais je trouve que c'est intéressant. Voilà, eh bien, good coffee, il y a des petits gâteaux, tout va bien. And thank you, Flis, and thank you, Adriana.